This reminds me of when you were little, always wanting to share my tea.
The first time she looked me in the eye and said, "You're just a nobody, aren't you?" I remember my hand shaking, but not from anger, it was disbelief. Because she had no idea who I really was, and what I had quietly built long before she walked into our lives. That day, standing in my own living room, I realized some people only see value when it's written on paper. My name is Mira, I'm 52 now. For most of my life I lived simply, teaching in a small school, raising my only son Rowan, after my husband passed away early. I didn't wear fancy clothes, and I never cared about what people thought. My world was my son and my students. After years of saving every rupee I could, I bought a small piece of land on the edge of town. Everyone told me it was useless, but I held on when the city expanded. That useless land became worth something. Still, I never showed it off. Rowan grew up, got a job, and one day brought home a girl, Nisha. She was pretty confident and came from a big city family. I welcomed her warmly, but from the very first day, I noticed the distance in her smile. She would often look around our modest house and say things like, "Auntie, it's cute." In a small town way, I just smiled and said, "Yes, beta." Small things hold big peace. Things truly changed after the wedding. Suddenly I was no longer Ma. I was Miraji. She didn't say it rudely, but her tone carried an invisible wall. At a family dinner one night, her friend asked what I did for a living. Before I could answer, Nisha laughed softly and said, "Oh, she's just a retired teacher. Rowan takes care of everything now." Everyone smiled politely, but inside, something quiet broke, not because she said I was just a teacher, but because my own son didn't correct her. Over the months, she began making small decisions. Changing furniture, hosting her friends, spending from Rowan's account. Without thinking twice, I didn't say much. I had learned that silence can sometimes protect peace. But when she started talking about selling my old land to buy a better apartment, I knew I had to listen carefully. She told Rowan it was wasted property. And what's the point of holding on to old memories? I overheard her once saying on a phone call, "His mother's so simple. She doesn't even understand what that land is worth." I stood outside the door holding a tray of tea, pretending not to hear. That night, I sat alone in my room staring at my husband's photo. It wasn't the money, it was the disrespect. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much for someone to call me a noob. A few weeks later, Rowan asked me for the land papers. He said Nisha's father could help manage the sale better. I smiled and handed him a folder. Not the real papers, just copies. Because what no one knew was that the land wasn't just in my name. It was already leased to a small educational trust. That trust was something I quietly founded to help poor children study for free. And every month it sent me a small, steady income. I had built it years ago using the savings from my teaching days. No one in my family knew, not even Rowan. I didn't confront anyone, I just continued my routines. Teaching, part-time, cooking, helping Nisha when she needed it. One afternoon, the trust invited me to an anniversary event. They insisted I come as the founder. I agreed and asked Rowan and Nisha to accompany me, saying it was a small function. They reluctantly came. The hall was filled with students, teachers, and local officials. When they announced my name, founder and trustee Mrs. Mira Sharma, I saw Nisha's eyes widen. People spoke about how the trust had educated over 300 children in the past decade. Rowan looked stunned. Nisha clapped slowly, her expression unreadable. That night at dinner, Nisha was unusually quiet. After the meal, she came to my room and stood by the door. She said softly, "I didn't know, Ma." I'm sorry. I looked at her, not with anger, but with the calm that comes from truth. I said, "It's okay, Beta. You didn't need to know everything. But now you do that." A person's worth isn't decided by what they wear or where they live. It's in what they build when no one is watching. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. Life has been quieter since then. Nisha treats me with a new kind of respect. Not because I have money or status, but because she finally saw me. Rowan later told me that day changed how he viewed humility. Sometimes the best lessons are not taught. They are lived, and I've learned you don't need to prove yourself to anyone. Truth has its own voice, it speaks when the time is right. If this emotional story touched your heart, like, comment, and subscribe for more calm, real-life stories that remind us what truly matters.